Hello and welcome back to FatbossTV. Today we're covering the King's Rest dungeon on Mythic. This video should help anyone in the early weeks of the expansion clearing this place for the first time, but it will definitely help you out with higher Mythic Plus keys later on down the line. But there's a lot to talk about in this instance, there's many different types of mobs, so let's jump straight in. After zoning in and descending the first staircase, you'll come across animated guardians. Tanks face them away from the group and watch out for their suppression slam. This long cast is a cone that will stun anyone that's hit by it. These guys at some point will enrage, making their cast quicker, so make sure you kill them fast. A pack of 7 Minion of Zul adds will wait for the group to engage them. You can either kill them by damaging through their shield or just simply purge it off. If they do reach a player, they will be feared. In the next room, interact with the seal to spawn the next set of trash. Just make sure that you are on the balcony before the trash spawns, as otherwise you'll just pull everything. Champions will frequently channel Vigilant Defense, which will just hold up a shield in a direction for 6 seconds. Make sure you stand on the opposite side of them to continue dealing damage. After so long, these guys will enrage, increasing their damage done by 100%, so make sure you either soothe it off or kill these guys before the enrage even applies. Witch Doctors will spam cast Deathly Chill on the tank. Don't interrupt it unless you can cover both the Deathly Chill and the Shadow Bolt volley, because the volley hurts a lot. Whilst fighting the warriors, they will spawn wandering tornadoes around them. Either do your best to avoid them, or just move the mobs away from the tornadoes so it's easier for melee. Once all trash has been killed, move back towards the balcony and wait for the first boss to spawn, the Golden Serpent. While fighting this boss, healers must spot heal players with the Spit Gold debuff. Upon expiration of this debuff, the player will spawn a patch of molten gold at their location. You want to keep these patches as close together as possible to help keep the room clear, but also to help deal with the adds that spawn from them when Luca's Call is cast after 3 patches have spawned. The animated gold adds will travel towards the boss and grant him a 50% damage increase and a large absorption shield if they reach him. This buff is only removed when the shield is broken. You want to use slows, stuns and displacement spells to keep these adds far away from the boss, and you want to nuke them down fast. When they die, they will return into puddles again, so it's important that they're kept far away from the boss. The tank might have to readjust the boss positioning throughout the fight just to make sure that distance is kept from the puddles. Meanwhile, the group will still want to continue to drop new Spit Gold debuffs near the old patches. When Tail Thrash is cast on the tank, you want to make sure that you have your active mitigation up. This cast hurts a lot. And when Serpentine Gust is cast, everyone will want to move away from the targeting circle around the boss. The boss remains still during this time, so tanks keep that in mind when positioning away from the animated gold adds. After the serpent is dead, you'll want to head through the gate, down a corridor and into the chamber. The far end of the chamber is sealed. You've got to kill the 4 mini-bosses that spawn in a random order each time you come into the dungeon. Whilst fighting King Tamalji and Queen Wazi, avoid the deadly Blade Storm. Tanks will want to kite the king during this time. When Queen Wazi casts Seduction on a random non-tank player, have your healer dispel them, otherwise you'll have to wait 30 seconds for the mind control to time out. Do not damage the player during this time, it will not break the effect. You want to make sure that you interrupt the Queen's Shadow Bolt as much as you can just to reduce the tank damage. When fighting King Rahues, move away from his Channel Lightning. This effect can be interrupted with displacement effects. When Guard Captain Atu casts his Axe Barrage, you want to try and stack up so your healer can efficiently out-heal the incoming damage from the dot that's left behind. You can, however, stun his cast if you're quick enough. Be ready to interrupt Seneschal and Barra when Induced Regeneration is cast. Otherwise, just purge the hot off the enemy that she healed. When shot by Queen Patla's Dark Shot, move from the pool that is left behind as it deals ticking damage and slows you. The Raptor will jump to a random player and channel Hunting Leap, dealing damage in a cone directed at the initial location of the player that it jumped to. You'll want to make sure that you move away from it. King Akul will apply a Hidden Blade Poison debuff to a random non-tank player. This dot causes you to spawn puddles underneath you. You'll either want to be dispelled or just drop the puddles far away from the group. You want to make sure that you move away from the purple swirlies that the Bloodsworn agents create when they cast Shadow Whirl, as they'll blink to it and deal damage to anyone nearby. After the group has defeated all 4 of these mini encounters, the portcullis at the far end of the chamber will open up, allowing you to move on. As you cross the bridge and fight the Purification construct, tanks must try and position the Purification strike patches in decent locations. When Purification beam is cast, do your best to dodge it as it rotates clockwise. In the next boss room, you want to clear all the trash as you need a lot of space to deal with the next boss. Just be careful not to pull him while clearing because it's very easily done. When fighting the little goos, watch out for their patches that spawns underneath players. These apply a stacking dot and slow, making it even harder to dodge future patches. Whilst fighting either of the internment constructs that are in this chamber, watch out for the Entomb cast on a player. This places that player within a crypt and gives them a single ability which causes the crypt to wiggle, allowing the rest of the group to see where you are so that you can be released. It is important that you are released quickly, as the group will be taking ever increasing ticking damage over this time. After the room is cleared, the group can now safely engage Machimba the Embalmer. Now this encounter room has 4 crypts, 2 on either side of the room. the boss will entomb you just like the trash beforehand. Whilst entombed, the boss will begin to open each crypt, opening yours last. Each crypt that is opened either by the boss or by a player that doesn't have the group member inside, that will spawn a half-finished mummiad. These guys are very dangerous because they cast a group-wide disease dot that hurts a lot, so make sure you interrupt it. The best strategy is to have each player already standing next to a crypt, and you can use the wiggle button fast so that your group can release you before any ads spawn. Don't stand next to a crypt when Burn Corruption is due to be cast. If you're targeted by this, it will spawn a very large patch of fire underneath you, and this fire lasts a long time, so keeping the patches away from the crypts is a good idea. The healer should spot heal the drain's fluid target to above 90% health to remove the damage and movement speed reduction debuff that is left behind. After you defeated that boss, head up the stairs and into the Halls of Ash, but make sure you wait. Move into the room too early and you'll pull a shit ton of trash as it spawns. Hexpriest will spam cast Spectral Bolt on the tank, dealing some damage, but you'll want to save your interrupts for their Hex cast. This debuff pacifies and silences the player. When fighting Berserkers, watch out for their Bloody Leap cast as they jump to a purple landing location, which deals damage and knocks you back. You want to focus these guys down first as they also apply a stacking dot to the tank or anyone within 10 yards of them if the tank has decided to run from them. A Brute will patrol down the middle of the halls. You want to watch out for this guy to not accidentally pull him as you clear the room. When fighting him, make sure you move from his Ground Crush cast as it hurts a lot and it will knock you up. Witch Doctors will cast Frost Shock on a random target, dealing a moderate burst of damage and slowing the target's movement speed by 50%. You want to dispel this effect when you can. The Witch Doctors will also place down a Healing Tide totem nearby. This totem will heal all trash mobs, so DPS need to swap to it immediately. While fighting the Beastmasters, watch out for the Deadeye Shot cast on a random target. After the long cast, the player will take a moderate burst of damage and be knocked back a massive distance. This can easily knock you into more trash, so make sure you position well beforehand. Also to note is their Poison Barrage. If you're fixated by this 4-second long cast, stand still or move to face the Beastmaster away from the rest of the group. After that cast, a barrage of arrows will fly towards you in a cone that follows you, applying a nasty dot. Honoured Raptors will cast Hunting Leap. This acts identically to the raptor that you saw from the mini-boss, just avoid their channeled frontal cone after they leap on you. After you've cleared the room, head towards the next boss. Now this boss encounter consists of 3 bosses, one after another. The order in which the bosses appears changes on a weekly basis. Once a boss is defeated, they will no longer engage the group directly, instead only appearing occasionally to cast a signature spell before fading away again. Whilst tanking atal'dazar, watch out for the Deliberating Backhand. This cast places a debuff on you that makes you take 200% more damage for 10 seconds. You want to use large defensive cooldowns here, or consider kiting her until the debuff drops. The signature ability from atal'dazar is the Barrel Through. She'll focus a player and then run at them after 8 seconds, dealing damage and knocking back players on her way, and then hitting the initial target for an additional burst of lethal damage. This is however reduced for each person she barreled through, so make sure everyone in your group is hit. When cast as a spirit, atal'dazar will appear at a random location at the edge of the encounter space, so you need to quickly identify where she is so you can all soak the charge. When fighting Kula the Butcher, healers need to watch out for the Severing Axe cast. This applies a nasty dot to a random player. You need to make sure that they're topped. Kula's signature ability is Whirling Axes. After a short cast, she'll deal damage and knock back all players within 10 yards. Melee will need to make sure they move before the cast finishes. Immediately after the cast does finish, Kula will send out blades that spin away from her in a circular motion. Initially these axes move away very quickly but will slow down. The axes will then proceed to rotate around the room, slowly moving towards the edges, at which point they will despawn. Getting hit by these axes will knock you back and apply a dot. When cast as a spirit, Kula will always appear in the middle of the room. Zanazal the Wise has 2 casts that your group should aim to interrupt. Lightning Bolt just simply deals damage to the tank and is cast pretty frequently, so groups with long cooldown interrupts may struggle to get every cast. Zanazal's signature spell that has to be interrupted is Poison Nova. This cast will apply a nasty high damage dot on the entire group. This can quickly wipe you if the cast does go through, so saving at least 1 interrupt for this cast is essential. When he casts this ability as a spirit, he will appear at a random location at the edge of the room and begin his cast. You need to make sure that you react fast to it. Zanazal will also cast Call of the Elements. 4 different totems will spawn around the edge of the room. You'll want all DPS to swap to them immediately. Explosive Totem must die first. If his explosive cast goes through, you're almost definitely looking at a wipe. The Thundering Totem should be killed second. At the end of its Thundering Crash cast, it'll interrupt any player's spell casting, so keep a close eye on it so you're not locked out. You want to kill the Torrent Totem third. The Torrent bolts that it channels are avoidable, but the movement required definitely reduces your output. And last, you want to kill the Earthwall Totem. This totem places a magic purgeable damage absorption shield on the active boss for 2 minutes. This ability is also considered a signature spell, so he will also cast this as a spirit. After defeating the Council of Tribes, backtrack and cross the bridge after the cutscene. When fighting the Shadow of Zul, move away if you have the Dark Revelation debuff. When it expires, you'll deal fall-off damage to the group, and you'll spawn a single minion of Zul ad. Make sure you purge it. When a Pool of Darkness spawns, have a single player stand within it. This will prevent the group from taking heavy AoE damage. And once he's dead, you can enter the final boss room. Now, atal'dazar has 3 abilities that it will cast throughout the encounter. When he casts Blade Combo, make sure that you use active mitigation as a tank because this really hurts. When targeted by a Quaking Leap, move far away from other players, as when he jumps to you, it will deal fall-off damage to the group. atal'dazar will cast Gale Slash at a random non-tank player. This will send out a tornado towards that player, and upon arriving, the tornado will proceed to spin around the encounter area before despawning a while later. Getting hit applies a dot to you and knocks you back, so make sure you do avoid these, which is a little bit easier said than done because they do come in frequently, and eventually you will have a lot of them up. At 80% health, atal'dazar will summon Raban. Your tank will need to pick him up, and DPS should nuke Raban down the moment he spawns. Raban will cast Hunting Leap, and just like the other raptors you've seen, it's a cone on a random player. Just avoid it. Upon reaching 60% health, atal'dazar will summon his mount, Tazala. He will subsequently mount her until she dies, casting all of his abilities like usual. Tazala's Deathly Roar deals damage and fears the entire group for 2 seconds. This cast is uninterruptible and unavoidable. Tazala will redirect all damage taken by atal'dazar to itself via a passive, so make sure you cleave and multi-dot. Once atal'dazar reaches 40% health, he'll begin to lunge spears at locations on the ground from the ceiling, dealing damage and stunning players for 2 seconds. Now these spears will come down in 2 different patterns. One pattern will fill up the space between the central area and the wall in a line. This will then begin to rotate around the room, and after 1 full rotation, this pattern will end. You can actually run through this pattern if you are quick enough. Using teleports or stun immunities can make this even easier, and it allows you just to stand still and nuke the boss. The other pattern will form several cone-shaped areas around the room, each with areas for players to safely stand between. After these spears have triggered, the safe spots will now be targeted for the spears, leaving the previous areas as the safe spots for players to stand in. Find the initial safe spot and then simply alternate between them. And that's all you need to know for this fight, and that finishes King's Rest. If you'd like to know even more about this instance with detailed tooltips and strategies for all the bosses and trash, then do check out our guide over on Wowhead. A link for that can be found in the description. If this video helped you out at all, then do drop us down a like, it helps us out a lot. And before we do go, we'd like to give a huge thank you to all of our supporters over on Patreon. You guys are absolutely fantastic. We really do appreciate the continued support. Thank you for watching, and we shall see you all in the next one. Thanks for watching.